Early into the Titan's ventures to purify Azeroth, Eonor was gifted a seed by Elune, and she planted it on Azeroth. It was known as Elunahir, the first world tree. Over the years, I've wondered where is Titan Keeper Freya? Well, I've had many theories about this without any direction, just mostly guessing, but thanks to recent lore tidbits that explicitly name her and those things' relevance to the current lore, I think I can once again make a bold claim. Titan Keeper Freya has been missing in lore since around Legion. In Legion, almost all of the Titan Keepers show up in the defense of Ulduar against the Legion, except Rawdin and Freya. Rawdin would appear as a hologram in Legion, but we know what actually happens next to him. The depressed keeper that had lost purpose and motivation was aloof for a long time. When Sargeras stabbed Azeroth, it revealed the Chamber of the Heart, a secret installation created by Arcadius as a focal point or nexus between all other Titan installations. More on that later. Magni would go at the behest of the World Soul's beckoning, and from the Chamber of the Heart would send out a call to all other Titan installations to call for help. Few answered the call. Mimron answered only to hang up. But Rawdin showed up. He marveled at the chamber and said he was unaware of its existence and that it must be Arcadius's work. But then old gods attack, and Ra finally remembers his purpose in life, the thing he was created for, and his sacred final task given by his creators, to kick old god ass, and so he does. He would later perish in Ny'alotha. However, Titan Keeper Freya does not show up. She doesn't show up for the defense of Azeroth against the Legion. She doesn't show up for the events of the Shadowlands, which two other nature deities are deeply involved. She doesn't show up for the awakening of the Dragon Isles. She doesn't show up for the assault on the Emerald Dream by Fyrakk, or the assault on the Timeways by the Infinite. And so far, she has not been found on a single Titan installation which we have visited. Sort of. In Dragonflight Season 2, events with cosmetics and catch-up gear referred to as time rifts were added to the game. These offer alternate timelines with different versions of Azeroth. There are two among them of special interest to this video, and I'll be talking about Ulduroth first. Ulduroth is a timeline described by the bronze dragon Siridormi as a timeline where Titan's experiments are successful and have ordered the universe. At the end of every time rift event is a rift to this other timeline to fight a boss. In the Ulduroth timeline, we fight Titan Keeper Freya, who now bears the title Planetary Overseer. When we arrive, Siridormi marvels at the timeline and then says the Titans were successful, there is no shadow here, only order and life. The installation we fight Freya on is identical to that where we save Eonor's soul fragment during the Legion raid Tomb of Sargeras on Eluna'hir. There are subtle clues this installation on Ulduroth is over the Veil of Eternal Blossoms as well. There are two artifacts here detailing the Watcher's experiments or observations under Freya. One notes the Yongle and their survival techniques of hiding, and the other describes an instructional manual given to new Watchers. These are not too insightful compared to the other time rift though, but I believe these two time rifts details combined play into the theory I'm proposing. The other noteworthy time rift is Azkaroth. The Black Empire spread across Azeroth unhindered and without Titan intervention. There is a tablet we find after fighting the Fury of Inzoth. It describes the Faceless One, a priest, I think, who is sacrificing mortals. Another mortal approaches and begs for their current sacrifice to be spared. The Faceless One is amazed that the interloper wants to sacrifice themselves and is willing to take them in the place of the current one. But the interloper wants for neither of them to be sacrificed, which the Faceless One thinks is absurd and flays them both. It ponders, then concludes, quote, "If nothing else, it will make for a unique tribute. Would it be selfish to keep its skin? Yes, perhaps that would be too much. The hunger of the Ancient One must be sated." The Ancient One may simply refer to Inzoth, but this version of the world mean all the old gods are alive and thriving. There is one other case of the Ancient One noted as being used though, and it is quite interesting relative to this. Now we all know that Hearthstone stuff is within its own canon, but it's been common enough for Blizzard to drop something in Hearthstone and then later add it to WoW. This one is particularly interesting and perhaps relevant in some way to the current story beat involving the Blackblood, because I've been trying to discern the point of this or the unseeming, which I'll get into later. Quote, The Ancient One was an extremely powerful servant of the Old Gods that was vanquished long ago. It was the Old Gods' greatest creation and served as one of their many generals. Even long after its death, portions of the Ancient One's blood remains, and if enough of the fluid is brought back together, the being can be brought back to life. The expansion story for this Hearthstone mirrors the story of Azeroth. The Ancient One released in the Hearthstone set Whispers of the Old Gods, where the Old Gods managed to break free their prisons and rule the world once more. Summoning enough blood of the Ancient One sacrifices them to summon the Ancient One. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The parallels are there. So what is the nature of the black blood? What is the Dark Heart supposed to do? We aren't sure yet, but if I make my Gallywix bargain theory video, I might speculate. Stepping into the black blood gets stacks of a debuff called unseeming. The unseeming allows us to see ghostly figures, and we encounter something like the Ancient One in Nerebar Palace. It is the bloodbound abomination, which may be a typo. I think I meant bloodbound horror. It creates Naraki faceless ones from the unseeming and sends players into the unseeming with its frontal. When they return to reality, they are scarred and take more damage. The Adventure Journal says, quote, "In the dark pits below Nerebar Palace, the blood of the old gods congeal in foul black pools. The bloodbound horror rises from this vile ooze, drawing everything in its path into the unseeming. And the location it is found in is called the congealing pool, so I have to imagine the horror is not fully formed. With the release of the Undermine, we've seen eye stalks grow from the black blood tainted ground, as well as perhaps one of the life forms born of the blood and its seeping corruption into the ground. That's interesting, but where is Titan Keeper Freya? We see her in an alternate timeline in a rift in Dragonflight Season 2, where she is Planetary Overseer, a position that is sort of given to Odin originally. Well, in Dragonflight Season 3, we travel to the Emerald Dream and repel the shadowflame corrupted Fyrakk and save Yggdrasil and the Dream and yada yada. In the Emerald Dream is a lore item, Elunahir, the first world tree. It tells the story of Elunahir, of how it tells the story I told at the beginning of the video, about how Elunahir was given a seed by Elun, which she planted, believing it would root out old god corruption of the planet. Aman'Thul noticed this and said it was not something of order and demanded it to be destroyed. Elunahir notes, after its destruction, that though the top of the tree has been destroyed, its roots live and will continue to grow. She tells this to her creation, Titan Keeper Freya, and tasks her with protecting it so that life will flourish as a result of it. We're told the dream is what the world would have been, unaltered by intelligent life, and what it may become again one day. We're told twice in Dragonflight the world may become the dream again. Those Olderoth lore items I mentioned earlier, as well as the alternate timeline, appear to exist in a world where mortals are few and only Yongle are described to us as bestial and are so primitive they live in shallow caves rather than as the nomads we know them as in modern WoW. Freya is closely tied to the Emerald Dream's origins as it is today. Quote, Freya, one of the 9 Titanforge keepers, created the Emerald Dream during the Ordering of Azeroth to serve as the underlying blueprint for the planet. Some believe that she wove the Emerald Dream into being from nothing. Others claim that this strange place had always existed in some form, a dream born from Azeroth's slumbering world soul which Freya tapped into and molded, what would become known as the Dream as the way to commune with the nascent Titan. While the dream may have existed in some form, the Titans and their keepers ordered it specifically as a singular blueprint of Azeroth. The dream's usefulness as a blueprint is to restart life after the use of the Forge of Origination in Oldham. Oldham used to be a lush forest, but it's now a desert because of the use of it to repel the Thunder King. So we could imagine the Emerald Dream would be a blueprint for restarting life on Azeroth if this happened globally. Chronicles said that the Titans go to nascent world souls and establish order and cultivate life on them. The purpose of life isn't fully understood, but it is said to be important to the cultivation or development of the world soul. The wild gods have physical forms in the material world, spiritual forms in the Emerald Dream, and when they die they go to Ardenweald to be reborn. Loa are example of wild gods, as is Cenarius. This will be important later. Let's get back to the roots of the first world tree. Elunahir. There is much speculation as to where Elunahir would have been, but I think we already know. I must explain this micro-theory before my theory regarding Titan Keeper Freya and Elunahir. It's quite simple, really, though. In the Emerald Nightmare raid in Legion, we went to confront Il'gynoth, Heart of Corruption, and a corrupted version of Ungoro Crater. Malfurion says that the world tree at the center of Ungoro is corrupted and that we must destroy the Heart of Corruption. Now, like me, and everyone else probably, you thought, when was there ever a world tree in Ungoro Crater? There's just a volcano and a ton of dinosaurs. Well, if you take into account the story of Elunahir, you'll recall that Eonor planted the tree and Aman'Thul demanded it to be destroyed. And Eonor told Freya that the roots would live on and to protect it and nurture it so that life can flourish. Now you probably understand. Ungoro Crater is a crater because it is where the first world tree was planted before it being ripped out. Il'gynoth is a tumorous growth of Inzoth, and his whispers have been the subject of speculation since he was added to the game. But few stand out here, including what Malfurion says about Il'gynoth. Quote, Malfurion upon entering the dream version of Ungoro Crater. What horror is this? A tumor of nightmare infecting a world tree, herein the reflection of the Titan's own playground. If this seed takes hold, the roots of its infestation will wind their way into the heart of Azeroth. The nightmare would devour the world, claiming everything and everyone. This must not come to pass. The relevant Il'gynoth whispers are as follows. Her heart is a crater and we have filled it. Its surface blazes bright, masking shadows below. I want to add, as a side tangent, there is a semi-secret Tide Sage NPC in Nashatar named Gloomseeker Yarga, who accepts 3 cursed items, one of which is called Encrusted Coin, with the same model or icon as the gem encrusted coins used by the Earthen, and its flavor text reads that it is cursed. Talking to Yarga nets interesting quotes such as, the cries of the drowned are getting louder, the lords of fallow fields are laid barren, a strange skull stares. There are many things darker than night. With their dying breaths they curse the world, the eternal clock winds down. Turning in these items to her, she says, the cache of the soul cursed grows ever larger. They must be freed, they must be delivered. But returning to Il'gynoth and the World Tree, so we've established there's a World Tree in the untampered version of Ungoro Crater within the Emerald Dream, but that the top of it was destroyed in our version of the world, and that may be why there is a crater there. Freya directed the Well of Eternity's energies to create the Cauldron of Life, accelerated evolution, and observing the effects. These places were Ungoro Crater, Vale of Eternal Blossoms, and Shelazar Basin. Data mined early into The War Within was a map that showed zones planned by Blizzard, one including an area called Rootlands positioned between Hollowfall and Azj-Kahet. Blizzard would come out saying that the Rootlands was planned, but because of the massive story spoilers, would not appear on PTR. And so far, we still have not seen any references to it in the game files, as far as I know, besides what was originally data mined. However, we have enough information to go on. The Rootlands is poised to be between Hollowfall and Azj-Kahet. Between Hollowfall and Azj-Kahet is the Ruptured Lake. Within it and all along its walls and ceilings are giant roots. At the top of the ceiling of the Ruptured Lake is a spiral of roots and green light. You might remember this spiral because there is a dragon writing glyph to collect here. If you go further past the glyph towards the source of light, you'll be put to sleep with a debuff that says drowsy, and teleported to the bottom of the collapsed lake. Speculation currently is that this is where the entrance to the Rootlands will be. It is also where the data mine map put it. Okay, so we can just go ahead and say we found the roots of Elunahir, right? We could jump straight to that conclusion, yes, but we could also go based on Khazalgar's position and pre-sundering maps where it would be relative to Ungoro Crater, and can easily tell the Rootlands is further west underground than where Khazalgar is. So we can say geographically, yes, it makes sense too. Next, Orwena and her people, the Harenir, resemble trolls with a strong devotion to these roots. Their culture and traditions revolve around these roots and protecting or worshipping them. Driven by visions caused by the Radiant Song, Orwena has departed with a scouting party from their homeland. The scouting party holds disdain for the way she is ready to cast aside their people's traditions for these visions, and wish to return to their homeland. Eventually, they all do without her. Personally, I speculate that the Hairnir are the predecessors to the trolls as we know them, but trolls could also have been the origin of the Hairnir. Returning to the story of Elunahir, it says that long after the fall of the Black Empire, mysterious guardians arrived and dedicated their lives to protecting the roots of Elunahir. With this context of the lore item from the Emerald Dream saying all this, and the Hairnir worshipping and protecting these roots with a deep connection to Druidism, it is safe to say that the roots are the roots of the First World Tree. Like, it's just basically guaranteed at this point, and I think most people getting into the War Within lore already know this. The Hairnir describe a calamity, and that something is bad has happened, or is happening to the roots. Okay, so now that I've laid it all out, this is my theory quite simply, and maybe a little bit more speculation for 4 expansions. For 4 expansions, I've asked and theorized, where is Titan Keeper Freya? Why has she been missing? And we never really got any hints until Dragonflight. I guessed and guessed wrong every time up to this point, often believing this next expansion is when we finally find out what is so important Freya has abandoned the living of Azeroth. And I am once again making the claim that I know, but this time I don't have just wild theories, I have all the info provided in lore through the chronicles and in-game books and stuff. Titan Keeper Freya will appear in the Rootlands as friend or foe, and I do think foe is on the table. She could... How could the Emerald Nightmare be allowed to fester? How could Xalatath, who at the time of Legion is trapped under the ocean somewhere around Zandalar and Kultiris, grow parasitically into the Emerald Dream's version of Elunahir, and desiring to use its roots to tunnel to the core and claim the World Soul? If Freya is tasked with defending the roots, how could that be allowed to happen? The Shaper of the Emerald Dream? We know that the Titan Keepers can be corrupted, or at least mind-controlled like Rauden or possibly Loken. Freya was also corrupted by Yogg-Saron, who made her stay in the nursery of Ulduar and abandoned her duties to protect the Earth. Here is the timeline, I believe. Elunahir, together with Elune and possibly Winter Queen, plant Elunahir on Azeroth in order to fuse the World Soul with life energies via its tunneling roots, which would tunnel parallel to the core way towards the World Soul. It is planted in Ongoro Crater. Amantul despises this idea and demands its destruction. The removal of Elunahir creates Ongoro Crater. Elunahir joins her brethren to create the Titan Keepers to wage war on the Black Empire. After the Black Empire is defeated, Elunahir tells Freya exclusively that even though the top is destroyed, the roots are still alive and will continue to grow and life will flourish, and that Freya must protect the roots. Freya goes on to use the Well of Eternity to juice up Ongoro Crater as well as Xalatath Basin and Vale of Eternal Blossoms, shapes the dream giving names to the wild gods like the Loa, and August Celestials, who will go on to guide and be worshipped by the mortals, spreads around seeds planting the first trees, and doing all the stuff she is known to have done. Eventually, the Hairnir find the roots and come to love it. Guided by the wild gods in Elune, there is a diaspora. Notice that Ongoro Crater, Xalatath Basin, and Pandaria are all where dinosaurs are. They seem to originate here as a result of the Titan Keeper's experiments on life and forced evolution. All trolls have an ancient, close relationship with dinosaurs. I think the emerging Hairnir form bonds with the dinosaurs of Ongoro Crater, taking them as mounts or companions to the broader world. From here the diaspora happened, and over time the trolls that descended from the Hairnir, led by the Loa who they still worship, or Elune herself, spread across Azeroth. The Dark Trolls specifically settle around the Well of Eternity by the end of the Warlord period between emerging troll empires. Over time, many become the Night Elves, changed by the arcane energies of the Well, and forgot their connection to the trolls who they may often be at war with. The Wild God Cenarius would approach them and offer to teach them Druidism contrary to the arcane which the Night Elves had become accustomed to and built their society around. Influenced by the titanic energies of Order and Arcane emanating from the Well, many did, and the former Dark Trolls of Hyjal became renowned keepers of Hyjal. In lore, Azera wouldn't expand her empire to Hyjal, fearful of what Elune would think of her and do if she were to try. Why? I don't think it matters right now. I think it just matters that it is basically where the low-born Night Elves that got into Druidism to escape the typical caste life of inner cities went to do stuff or heard nature's calling. Moonglade is also significant to Druidic culture. It was once inhabited by the Dark Trolls, led there by the Loa, or perhaps guided by Elune herself. The Elven Empire dismantled much of the Troll empires and spanned much of the world, avoiding certain Titan installations such as Ulduar, Uldir, that of the Dragon Isles, Khazalgar, etc. I assume the Titan's defense network would vaporize them for trying, to be honest, but who knows. Even the Zandalari seemed to avoid Uldir and condemned outcasts to Nazmir. Fast forward, Ulduar has been manipulated, the Curse of Flesh long past happened. The Titan Keepers, not driven out or left of their own accord, have fallen to corruption by Yogg-Saron. Yogg has corrupted Freya to stay in the nursery of Ulduar and never leave, along with the 2 other Watcher underlings who we defeat. In a moment of clarity, she and the other Keepers grant us boon to defeat Yogg-Saron. Serenite, which the Tuskarr refer to as the black blood of Yogg-Saron, permeates the land. Similarly, we find the black blood of Y'Shaarj on the defeated Garrosh Hellscream at the end of the Siege of Orgrimmar raid. The black blood deep in the earth we find, though, is older than our recent battles with the old gods. The wiki page says that it was pooled there, but that when the sword of Sargeras stabbed the planet, it dislodged it, and it began to flow freely through the earth's earthen depths, coalescing and pooling wherever it may. Given the sword's proximity to Angora Crater and the massive pools of black blood pouring into the depths below Khazalgar, I believe the calamity stricken the Rootlands is caused by the sword dislodging the black blood. See, the tale of Elunahir says Eonor planted it primarily to purify the old god's corruption of the planet. The old god's body spanned continents and to great depths. What is the ruptured lake? Why do the roots specifically grow there rather than the rest of Halafal or Ashkahet? If you look at the former lake bed of the ruptured lake, you will find void corrupted fauna growing. The roots once fed from this lake, purifying it of black blood contained just within this pocket. The sword stab not only damaged the roots, but drove the black blood deeper into the earth, perhaps depriving the roots of a source of food. This is the calamity facing the Elunahir of the Rootlands in my theory. Whether due to old god corruption or due to her ancient task of defending these roots, Titan Keeper Freya is in or will be in the Rootlands, trying to solve this problem. The Elunahir likely worship her as a god, as likely do the wild gods. Then again, if the dream already existed in some form and the wild gods are not Freya's sole creation, then they may see her as an oppressor that ordered their home. And she may treat the Elunahir without dignity in her task, like the Watcher of Olgoloth treat the Yongle as such specimens that they only exist to be studied. Under alternate universe, Freya's rule as planetary overseer. I think not just the Night Elves, but the Trolls and Elunahir are creations of Elune, who she and the Wild Gods have guided through the ages with a sacred duty to protect life, beginning with the creation of the Elunahir to protect the roots of the World Tree, who then migrated across the world, evolving into the Trolls we know them as now, and then later into the Elves and their descendants. Malfurion and Illidan were born with glowing eyes, which to their people meant that they had bore great destiny, 10,000 years and countless scars and loss, all to protect some roots from the Titans and plant another world tree. Illidan is a bestial, otherworldly thing who Elune denied the gift of Druidism to, and I think maybe his destiny was to protect the roots and world soul by any means necessary. While Malfurion's was to protect the dream, nature, the roots, and the world trees, like Hyjal, and that of Yggdrasil. Outro slide. Chronicles Volume 1. In an effort to stop the spread of Serenite through the world, Fandral Staghelm and his closest followers took 6 enchanted branches from Nordrassil and planted them in Ashenvale, Crystalsong Forest, Feralis, Duskwood, and the hinterlands. These great trees successfully scoured the Serenite deposit from their respective regions, and heartened by their success, the Druids planted the last and greatest bow in Northrend, where it grew to an astonishing speed into the world tree known as Andrasil. The Tuskarr referred to Serenite as the black blood of Yogg-Saron. If Titan Keeper Freya's job is to protect the roots of the World Tree, and the World Tree's job is to delete black blood, then how did Yogg-Saron corrupt Andrasil, and therefore the dream? How did N'Zoth corrupt the dream version of Elunahir in Ungral Crater? Well, We know that Titankeeper Freya was corrupted by Yogg-Saron, and even though she helped us to defeat him, we have not seen her in the game since.